The Trump administration has begun dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which prevents Americans from getting scammed, defrauded, and ripped off by big banks, payday lenders, and other financial institutions. It's a pretty important government agency, and it's returned $21 billion to Americans who are essentially stolen from by these financial institutions. So we're gonna get to who's behind I don't know if it's gonna be temporary, I don't know what the end result is gonna be, but the at least temporary shuttering of the CFPB in just a moment. But Cenk.
Yes, so the question in this story is it populist to shut down a government organization, or is it the opposite of populism to take away police from Wall Street? So let's find out.
All right, well, Trump appointed someone by the name of Russell Vought as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's acting director. He was also confirmed by the Senate to serve as the head of the Office of Management and Budget. Now, as soon as he was in a position of power, he started targeting the government agency that actually returns money to Americans who have been screwed over. So on Saturday, Vought ordered the CFPB's 1,700 employees to stop nearly all their work and announced plans to cut off the agency's funding. Then on Sunday, he closed the Bureau's headquarters for the coming week. Workers who tried to retrieve their laptops from the office were turned away, according to employees. So Vought also said that he intended to essentially cut off the Consumer Bureau's funding, which comes directly from the Federal Reserve, okay? So the Federal Reserve gives them, honestly, a small amount of money, relatively speaking, and then they use that money to investigate financial institutions that are accused of screwing over, ripping off, defrauding Americans. If they are found guilty of doing so, those banks and financial institutions have to refund the Americans that they ripped off. That's the whole point of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was established back in 2011 after the 2008 economic collapse, in which banks knowingly doled out toxic predatory mortgages. Then they bundled up those mortgages as securities to be traded on the stock market. And guess what? They bet against those securities because they knew they were chock full of toxic loans. That is what crashed the global economy as the banks got super rich off of it. Okay, so just wanted to give you that background. But it doesn't cost that much to protect Americans from these financial institutions. The agency's budget for 2025 fiscal year calls for around $800 million in annual spending. And the Fed transferred $242 million to the Bureau in January to fulfill its latest request. And again, that money is meant to help them investigate, these financial crimes against American citizens. So what was Russell Vought's reasoning for doing what he's currently doing with the CFPB? Well, complete and utter bullcrap, and I mean that. So today, the White House's office, or I should say the White House's official Rapid Response 42 X account accused the agency of being woke. Okay. Let's read that. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren, actually it is the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren. It was a great idea. She fought tooth and nail to establish it, and it's one of the best things she's done in her career. But anyway, has long functioned as another woke, weaponized arm of the bureaucracy that leverages its power against certain industries and individuals disfavored by so-called elites. No, okay. It specifically goes after Wall Street elites looking to screw over ordinary Americans, to charge them junk fees, to charge them exorbitant overdraft fees. The CFPB has essentially stepped in and protected Americans from that Wall Street behavior and those greedy actions that they've been taking. So I've got more details in just a minute, but just to give you a little bit of what they've done so far in the relatively short period of time that the CFPB has been around. Remember, it was established in 2011. It has clawed back $21 billion for consumers. It slashed overdraft fees, reformed the student loan servicing market, transformed mortgage lending rules so they can no longer, dole out those predatory loans, and forced banks and money transmitters to compensate fraud victims. Now, the tech industry, not real happy with the CFPB because there's this whole emerging industry known as fintech, so financial technology, things like Robinhood, financial institutions that act like banks but don't want to be considered banks and don't want to deal with the same regulations. So this is a huge problem because they want to ensure that there's no cop on the beat, especially at a time when crypto is ascendant due to the lack of regulation dealing with it.
Yeah, so $21 billion came back to us because the bankers were caught. If they didn't do it, there's no way they're sending you $1 back, right? So do you want $21 billion sent back to the American taxpayers and consumers, or don't you? So it's this, if you actually care about the average American, it would be mental to take away the cop on Wall Street. And that's what this is. So by the way, guys, look at this pattern now. They took away 50 agents at the SEC working on cybersecurity. They took away agents working on cybersecurity at the FBI, and now they're trying to close down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that regulates fintech. So they're trying to fire every cop that could be on that beat. This is defund the police on steroids, but for white collar crime. And so there's no justification for it. That's why they do these flares. So look, let's talk about MAGA for a second. Wang Jun, one of our members, wrote in, if shutting down the CFPB won't convince Trump supporters that the administration is only here to screw everyone over, I don't know what will. So first of all, be a member, be a part of the show, tyt.com/join. And so, but I want to address that. Wang, you have to understand, everybody doesn't consume the same news, the same media. So they will get totally different points of view. So if you watch mainstream media, you won't be able to tell the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is an amazing body that actually does great work. One of the very, very rare things in the government that actually does work for us and is successful. You'll hear a lot of, well, some say this and some say that, and they don't really like the CFPB as well either. So they're like, oh, well, it was pushed by Elizabeth Warren, blah, 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 right? If you watch right-wing media, they'll say absurd things like that tweet that Anna read you. It's woke.
Yeah,
what does that even mean?
It's not an argument.
Look, guys, now if you're MAGA and you hear something is woke, understand that half the time they're using that word to try to trick you to help the bankers and billionaires, etc. It's a giant distraction. And then they say, oh, the elites wanted the CFPB. What? The elites hate the CFPB.
Yeah, let me give you this one, graphic 5. This is so true. This is why you had Mark Andreessen on Joe Rogan's show going after the CFPB. The Consumer Bureau became one of Wall Street's most feared regulators. Because guess what? Look, now I'm gonna upset the left, but it's okay. You can be upset with me. I agree with MAGA on a lot of what they have to say about waste in our federal government. Sorry, I do think there's too much bureaucracy, and I think that bureaucracy oftentimes stands in the way of accomplishing policies that we want accomplished. I'm just gonna say it. That's why my hair wasn't on fire about the USAID thing. I do think there are good programs within that government agency, but there are countless examples of waste. The CFPB though, I don't want anyone touching it because it's literally the most important government agency looking out for Americans to ensure that they are not defrauded by Wall Street bankers and payday lenders.
There's such an enormous robbery headed our way.
This is bad,
Mark my
guys.
words. There's no way you fire all those cops at all those agencies or move them and try to shut down the best agency regulating Wall Street unless you're planning a massive robbery. It's gonna make, as Trump was, it's gonna make your head spin. You're not gonna believe it. No, guys, it's gonna be enormous.
They had just finalized a rule. The CFPB had just finalized a rule capping overdraft fees at $5. Okay, that's the kind of work the CFPB is doing. So explain to me how that's woke and we need to get rid of it.
I'll give you another one, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is overcharging their consumers on purpose. They're lying to their own clients that it trusted them and put their money in the bank. CFPB catches them, makes them give back billions to their consumers. Wells Fargo was just literally going to steal that money from their own deposit holders. And that organization caught him. Now they won't be able to catch him, and that's the whole point. And by the way, now that everybody on Wall Street knows that the cops have left the building, Oh, they're gonna rob you left, right. There's a giant robbery coming. I don't know what it is,
right,
but there's no question about it. And that one's gonna be a couple of $1 trillion. I know that sounds like a giant number. There's no way. Come on, really? Okay, hear me now, quote me later. A couple of $1 trillion they're gonna steal. But meanwhile, though, now green light for all the banks. Oh, do every robbery you can. Overcharge fees, this fee, that fee, the other fee. Doesn't matter if they signed up for it. There's no rules left. The bankers are in charge now.
Yeah, and by the way, like here's a few other examples, because I think it's important for people to understand the kind of work this agency does. I know the media doesn't cover it often, and that's why I think a lot of people might be tricked into thinking it's a good idea to dismantle the CFPB. But the agency recently adopted rules to eliminate medical debt from credit reports and limit most credit card late fees to $8 or less per month, but lawsuits have delayed those rules from taking effect. But it gives you a sense of what their priorities are, what their objectives are at this government agency. Now, all of this is happening as President Donald Trump literally just removed the director of government ethics, a gentleman by the name of David Hotema. If you're wondering, well, what does he do? Like, what was his role? Okay, he was nominated by the Biden administration and confirmed by the Senate on November 14th to serve a 5-year term. The whole purpose here of the director of government ethics is to ensure that there aren't financial conflicts of interest among government officials as they are carrying out their duties. Well, when you think about it, I mean, right now, people like Elon Musk, he's got massive conflicts of interest because while he's working on Doge, he's got his own private businesses that he's worried about, thinking about. And so he's using his position of power within the Trump administration. I know it's unofficial, but it doesn't matter. He's using that to chop up all sorts of government agencies that would be doing oversight of his own businesses. That's an issue.
It's a giant issue. Now we're going into the Pentagon. I love that. So now Hegseth, Elon Musk, Donald Trump are all on the record saying that they want to cut a couple $100 billion. If they deliver on that, I'll turn around and give them credit for that, right? So you have to judge each thing on its own. But meanwhile, does he have a conflict of interest in relationship to the Pentagon? Of course he does. Elon Musk has $3 billion in government contracts from the Defense Department.
Right.
And then does he have a conflict of interest at the CFPB? Yes. There's an issue with one of Elon's companies in Visa that Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was looking into. Well, they won't be looking into it anymore. By the way, who's making these decisions? The Office of Management and Budget. Who's the head of that? Russell Vought. Who's Russell Vought? He's the author of Project 2025, which wasn't supposed to be implemented. Trump said, oh, I don't know anything about that. Hey, look at that. It turns out he did know something about Russell Vought. And here he is now making these decisions. So they asked him, you're about to get $716 million, that's their budget for next year. He said, no, I don't want it, it's excessive. They said, okay, so what's not excessive? What do you want instead? He said, oh, I have a good number for you guys, 0.
Meaning I
want to shut this department down.
No more investigations into predatory behavior by banks and financial institutions. That's what that means, okay? And if you're wondering, okay, well, what are Democrats doing to fight back? Like what happens next? Well, there are unions representing some of these government workers. And so the union that represents employees at the CFPB has filed some lawsuits. It is known as the National Treasury Employees Union. Granting Musk's team access to employee records violated the Privacy Act, the 1974 law regulating how the government handles individuals' personal information, the union said in its complaint, which was filed in federal court in Washington. The union also filed a second lawsuit against the acting director, meaning Russell Vought, over his efforts to freeze the agency's work. Vought's orders illegally infringe, the union said, on Congress's authority to set and fund the missions of the Consumer Bureau. Now, I don't know if that argument is gonna hold up in court because Congress doesn't allocate the funding for the CFPB. The CFPB actually gets funded by the Federal Reserve. So we'll see how that plays out. But the reaction from congressional Democrats has been a giant steaming pile of garbage, basically, okay? They do not intend to fight back. They wrote like a strongly worded letter, not even to Russell Vought, prior to Russell Vought, there was a notice put out by Scott Bessent, who's the head of the Treasury now, basically saying or ordering the CFPB staff to stop issuing rules and court filings against financial institutions. And Democrats wrote a letter saying, we don't like that. Okay.
Well, that'll get you. All right, so two things about that. Number one, the one person, of course, fighting back in a way that's aggressive and good is Elizabeth Warren. This agency was her idea in the first place, and like Anna said, best idea she's ever had. And that's one of the reasons why I was super open to her all throughout, because she made Barack Obama open up this agency. And the reason I'm giving you that context is because that's why the Democrats are only half fighting back now. Because they got strong-armed by Elizabeth Warren and a couple other progressives to do this thing that they didn't really want to do anyway, because they have the same Wall Street banker donors. Obama had his top donors in 2008 were the banking industry, the financial industry. So that's why the Democrats are like, oh, you're getting rid of the thing that holds our donors accountable. Golly gee, I will write you a letter. But Elizabeth Warren's fighting back as best as she can. But we always like to be constructive here. So how would I fight back? First of all, I get everybody on TV. I don't know what they're doing sitting on their ass. Go on podcasts, go on television, go on CNN. It's not like they won't have you on, and make a case. Well, what's the case you could make? Like two things here that I would do. First of all, I'd keep hammering home, defund the police on Wall Street. This is defund the police on Wall Street. So and it's true. There's no question about it, right? And then that would get into a debate. Is this really defunding the police for Wall Street? And that's a debate you want. God, they're so terrible at messaging. And then the second thing is, I'd talk about the Wells Fargo situation. And I'd talk about how they did that robbery, and now Wells Fargo can go back to doing that same exact robbery, because there'll be no cops on the beat. And so can JP Morgan Chase, and so can Bank of America. They could all rob you now, because they defunded the police on Wall Street. Imagine if that was all over the Sunday shows. Right now, we'd all be talking about that. Instead, nearly nothing, because the Democrats are totally pathetic when it comes to fighting back. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.